Hi, I'm here with Peyton West. I'm Anthony King, the general manager at the Carlton Winemaker Studio and winemaker owner of Ratio Wines. And we've asked Peyton to do interviews and tastings with the winemakers that are included in the Carlton Winemaker Studio Spring Wine Club. And Peyton, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no worries. I'm super bored, so this is great.
So just as an introduction, Peyton is assistant winemaker with Isabel Meunier for all of her consulting clients, and for Lavinia, all of the wine that she makes with Peyton. And you've been working with Isabel for how long now?
This is about 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And he's an amazing asset, great winemaker.
right back at you. Thank you. Speaking of which, I'm trying your 2017 Hopewell Vineyard Pinot, which will be in the spring release, correct?
That's right. It's going to be
yeah.
the Portfolio and Pinot Noir Club.
Gotcha. And is this the first time that you work with this vineyard in this vintage?
This is the first time. This vintage was 2017. I've been friends with Mimi Castile, who owns the vineyard for years. And she's been developing a site that's really extraordinarily unique, and wanted to try it myself. And she was able to get me just a little bit of fruit in 2017.
Yeah, she's awesome. I mean, that site is like a very holistic kind of approach, right? I mean, they don't till, they completely let everything just blossom and grow the way it's supposed to throughout the vineyard, correct? Like there's very hands off as far as manipulation and management of the site. Is that correct, you would say?
Yeah, and if anyone has time, which I think a lot of us do, there's an amazing podcast interviewing Mimi by Levy Dalton. I'll drink to that. That's what, 2.5 hours long, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So, I mean, I know a lot of some of these questions, but I mean, how long have you been at the studio for making wine, just so people can have reference?
So I came to the studio in 2015, right at the very beginning of the year as general manager. Started making the wine there that fall. So that was my first vintage of Ratio. And then also make wine for a couple of the other clients there, or with those clients. And prior to that, I was at Lemelson Vineyard just down the road.
Right. Yeah. Super close by. You said that this had a whole cluster in it. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. So the Ratio typically is, most of the wines have some element of whole cluster, and I'll do anywhere from 0 on some vineyards to up to 100% on others.
Okay. Do you remember like what percentage you were at for this?
This is 30%.
Okay.
And it was a very slow, everything's natural fermentation. I remember this took forever to take off. I'm not quite sure why, but just a natural takeoff. And so I think I was in tank a lot longer than normal. Maybe contributes to some of the savory aspects of the wine.
And I remember 2017 being like a really, really amazing vintage for trying whole cluster, because the fruit spent a lot of time on the vine. And I mean, you and I have talked about many times about lignification, whether it matters or not for whole cluster wines. Yeah. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about that for this.
That's a good question. There's producers, if you talk to Steve over at Christum, who's famous for doing this style, he changes around the percentages, but he's always doing somewhere between 25 and 50, 60%. This vineyard specifically, I know that if fruit comes in and the stems are very, very green, they smell green,
right?
I definitely will shy away from it. But you don't see that very often, maybe on young vines.
Gotcha.
This vineyard's fairly nicely exposed. Mimi's been using cover crop consistently, so it doesn't have a lot of growth of the leaves. So it's nice and open. That tends to contribute to, and also with having that cover crop a little bit more stress, everything lignifies off, turns brown.
Right. Speaking of the whole cluster aspect of things, I think that when I think of Ratio wines, when I think of trying your wines, which I've tried a lot of, and I've tried them through the beginning of the process to the end of the process for several vintages now, I think of things that are very refined, very streamlined, acid built with round textures to kind of mellow out that skeleton. And I think with this wine, I mean, it delivers on all those notes for sure. Like it's outstanding. It's has all the positive characteristics that I would assume an Anthony King wine to be for Ratio. But something that I think that is very unique about it is that going back to the whole cluster aspect of this wine, and some of the other wines that you've made, I feel like that the whole cluster is not quite as maybe relevant in the aromatics, where with this one, I think it is very relevant in the aromatics because of that site and because of how maybe she farms that to be so charismatic through the stems, not just the fruit. And I think that this kind of, it pops pretty quick, like right up front. And then it has that very clean and streamlined structure in the back that I expect. But that's a really nice little, for people that are getting this in their shipment, I think that it's kind of like a pretty awesome bonus to be able to try something it's going to be different than everything else.
This is definitely different. I originally, so Ratio, the idea was to make Pinot Noirs that were more red fruited. I was looking for Pinot Noir that was compared to what I was making at Lemelson, which were bigger, darker, pretty rich wines. Wanted to make something that was more elegant, but definitely red and mineral.
Right.
And I called Mimi and asked her, looking for Eola-Amity fruit, looking for these characteristics, and she was like, "Well, that's my vineyard," and that's how I ended up coming into using Hopewell.
Right.
The style is definitely has more whole cluster characteristics. I think on my tasting notes for this, it talked about having like an orange bitters sort of characteristic. There's a oak breeze side to it. It's a lot of spice. It's definitely a little bit more out there. The label is this label, which
I love the label. It's awesome.
Yeah, so I chose this up. All the labels are from drawings from the 1800s to early 1900s.
Right.
This one's actually in the 1900s, but this is a glial cell. We could talk about it later if we do. I liked the idea that this guy's stepping out there a little bit.
Right.
In terms of style, this felt like a little step outside the box.
For sure. Yeah.
And during its élevage and barrel, it changed and it became a little bit more acceptable, but it was smoky and just tight, iron, all those sorts of characteristics. And now the fruit's been coming out a little bit more. So it's a little bit less of a step outside.
Yeah, definitely. I love the label. It's very clever. I don't know where you find those. Where do you find those old pictures? Is there like do you go online? Do you find old journals? How do you find those pictures?
I originally wanted to do art
they're drawings, right? They're not pictures.
They're drawings, yeah. So these are, I wanted to do drawings by a scientist named Cajal. He won the Nobel Prize in 1906. And it turns out that all of his drawings, he's quite famous in this field. And so you can't really get a hold of them without spending a lot of money. And a guy at the Cajal Institute in Spain was nice enough to say, he said, "My book is coming out this week. Buy a copy of it. You can have anything in there." And
how much wine did you give him, like bribe-wise?
Nothing so far. He asked me to put his name on the back, so his name is on the back of the label.
That's awesome.
But they've all come from that so far, and I think it'll just be a continual evolution of sort of honoring these scientists who started to dissect the inner workings of all of our nerves, and it started with the retina, and now I'm doing glial cells.
Yeah, that's very cool. And these are drawings of them literally like looking through a microscope and then drawing down what they see. Yeah.
Which I love the symbolism of that. I feel like that's the way I make wine, is to sort of dissect it and see what the purpose of each aspect of the wine.
Yeah, you kind of take your own lens effect to it. The way you look at a vintage, the way you look at a site, the way you look at anything. You take your version of how you look at it, and then this is your interpretation of it in the bottle. Right. Yeah, it's very clever, very clever. I like it. I like it a lot. I think that, so my wife and I were tasting this very, very briefly before we hopped on this call. And we were talking about kind of like what we would make with it, since we all have so much time right now to experiment with food and wine, specifically wine, since we have so much time. I think that, to me, this is like, it's bold enough and acidic enough to grab like a lamb dish, but it's elegant enough to also go with fish. So I mean, like, I hate it when people just say, "Oh, this will go great with salmon." It's like, yeah, thank you for that. We all get it. But I really think that this is structured enough of a Pinot Noir, and that stemminess and that whole cluster element and that spiciness could really go with something like maybe like a lamb tagine, like a Moroccan dish of some sort, because that's kind of like you get the baking spice characteristics from the whole cluster along with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind for food. Do you have any recommendations of what you would try?
No, I do think that right now, as it's a little bit younger, something that's got some fat to it would be good.
Yeah.
To play off of it, the tannin on the finish. Something that could be something as simple as a cream sauce that you have on a chicken. I probably wouldn't serve it with fish, even though there's a leanness to the wine in some sense.
Right.
Pork dishes again would be quite good with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, at this point, I've had this bottle open for probably about 15, 20 minutes now. And to me, it's like it's starting to turn a little bit more strawberry characteristics, like a little bit more strawberry preserve or jam. So it's like getting more dense, which I think is kind of interesting. Usually you expect the wine to kind of get less dense, and it's actually seeming to kind of concentrate on itself more and more, like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Which is really, really nice. Do you think that, I mean, when I watch you make wine in the cellar, you're very, very meticulous about how you like to have your fermentation management done. And it's specific to each site and to each vat. So it's not like you just have a process that you walk into the cellar and just go, all right, it's at this level of bricks, we're going to do this. It's at this, we're going to do this. Like you don't have a timeline that you follow, that you do things. Why are you smiling already?
It's just all anxiety driven. It's anxiety driven winemaking.
You could make a wine called Anxiety, the Anxiety Reserve. That could go into the next wine club shipment, the Anxiety Reserve by Anthony King. This was the very first video that we are doing in the series of videos for your upcoming spring wine club shipment. And forgive us if it's a little bit spliced together. We had some interruptions from my side and not from Anthony's side. Everything was perfect. There you go. There's his family working out. Yep. So anyway, it's a pleasure to talk to you and to do this. And bear with us. It'll get better and better and better. And I hope you enjoy these wines as much as I do and as much as Anthony anxiously made them. So yeah.
Thanks, babe.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah. See ya.